Today I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't buy a GR86 and you should buy a GT86. Hello and welcome back to LeEdFollow. Today I'm going to be telling you why it is the perfect time now, summer 2023, to go out and buy a GT86. Ah yes, the GT86. That lightweight rear-wheel drive Japanese sports car that was available for a pretty reasonable price and launched in 2012. The motoring journalists and magazines, they all loved it. Clarkson did a very memorable review on Top Gear where he said it was fantastic. Designed and engineered by Toyota chassis guru Tetsuya Tada. The car was officially unveiled to the world at the Tokyo Motor Show at the end of 2011. And I should know, as you can see, a very young version of myself was there at the Tokyo Motor Show in 2011 as a guest of Tetsuya Tada's, no less. I also bumped into Akio Toyoda, the CEO at the time, but that's a story for another day perhaps. So unless you've been living under a rock somewhere, you will have undoubtedly seen all of the magazines, YouTube reviews, etc. about the new Toyota GR86. I mean, earlier this year, me and my friend Paul, we took his GR86 to the Nürburgring. Fantastic car. But I'm here to tell you why you shouldn't actually buy one of those and why the clever money is actually on the predecessor, the GT86. Now let me start by saying that this isn't a video bashing the GR86. It's a very, very fine car, and if you were lucky enough to have been on the list to buy one like my friend Paul, then you're not going to be disappointed with it at all. Of course, the GR86 is an evolution of the GT86. Under the skin, they are exactly the same car. The main changes are that 400cc increase in the engine displacement, the chassis has been tweaked along with the drivetrain, plus it's been treated to a new interior and exterior. But make no mistake, at their core, the GR86 and the GT86 are the same car. They just are. Which brings me to the main focus of this video. If you wanted to buy a GR86 but didn't get one of the first batch in the UK, and you're not on the waiting list for any future cars they produce, then what do? You could of course head to the classifieds and try to pick up a used car. However, the owners know how rare these cars are, so prices are higher than the original new price. But here is the better option, and it may be blindingly obvious, but why not buy the GT86? After all, it's the same car, and I know looks are subjective, but the general consensus everywhere you go seems to be that the previous car was the better looking machine. Ah, but hang on a moment, I hear you say. The GR86 is the faster one, as it has that extra 30 horsepower, extra 30 foot-pounds of torque, and it's got better handling, and it's better built. Right? Well, in a word, yes and no. That's not necessarily accurate. Well, let's start with the engine. The GR86 now has more horsepower and more torque. And yes, that makes it quicker 0 to 60, but it is heavier than the previous car. So how much faster is it on track per se? Not much. The two cars are pretty similar lap times wise. Just go out there and Google it. Do some research, you'll see what I mean. So why is that? Well, one of the reasons could be down to the earlier car being lighter, but it could also be down to the steering. Not my words, those are journalists and online reviewers. Many have said the older car has the better steering weight and feedback. So even though the new car has a lot of chassis and suspension improvements, the steering wheel is that one main control that gives you feedback as to what the front wheels are doing, which is very important. And finally, let's talk build quality. Now I know this is going to put the cat amongst the pigeons, and there's going to be a lot of people out there that disagree with me, but let me plead my case. One of the big things that all of the journalists have said in all the reviews is how on the GR86 they made the cabin feel a lot more premium. But it's a bit of a trick, because one of the things I noticed when I was with Paul in his GR86, which is a lovely car by the way, I wouldn't knock it, a lot of the areas of the GR86 are now hard plastic, whereas in the GT86 it's soft, it's slightly better material. And a big example of this is here on the door cards and on the centre console. On the GR86, it's like a hard plastic now, whereas on the GT86, it's a soft material. It's a nicer material. It's a nicer place to be. And yeah, the GR86 dashboard probably looks a little bit more modern, a bit more German, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the GT86 interior is cheap. So something to think about is that the GR86 was only ever sold in the UK at one trim level. Everybody got the same interior essentially. And also you need to remember that GT86 was available in different levels of trim. And if you got a cheap model, then you'd have a cheap interior. If you got a premium top of the range model like I have here, everything's very nice. It's a very nice place to be. I'd never say this interior was cheap, not by a long shot. Maybe that's why the journalists keep thinking the GR86 got the better interior. Maybe the previous GT86 they drove wasn't a top spec car. Top spec? This was the highest spec premium car that you could buy in 2014 when this was brand new. And yeah, this is my premium interior. You may not have ever seen any seats like this if you're a GT86 owner. Notice the stitching around here. This is very, very rare. This was an interior that I believe was only sold in 2014 on top spec cars, and I think it only was available if you spec the auto gearbox. So this is a very, very rare interior. I've yet to see another car with those seats. So yes, the GR86 interior is probably a little bit more modern, a little bit more German. But let me show you some of the stuff here. So all this soft touch plastic. Look at this around the speakers, all soft touch. Look at these knee pads on either side of the centre console. All soft touch. On the GR86, that's just hard plastic. Make no mistake, this is not a cheap interior. This is a nice place to be. Let's talk depreciation. Yes, GR86s are holding used the same price they are new, if not more. That's just because there's so few of them around. Take this for example. Forget all the Cosworth stuff. Just pretend for a moment this was totally bone stock. This car right now, no word of a lie, if I sold this, it would be worth exactly what I paid for it 6 years ago. Something to think about. And how has it held the value so much? Well, it's low mileage. I've only put about 15,000 miles in this car in the 6 years I've owned it. It lives its entire life in a dry garage. I wash it all the time and I never drive it in the winter, so there's no corrosion on it. And most important thing of all, full service history, no expense spared, and I take really good care of this thing. And let's address the chassis, because there have been lots of chassis tweaks on the GR86. I know the body has been torsionally stiffened, and that there have been lots of suspension tweaks. Yes, those are probably very good. They do not make the GT86 a poor handling car, not by a long shot. The GT86, when it came out, it was praised by all the journalists for being such a great chassis and such a sweet handling little car. And just because the GR86 has been an evolution of that and they've made further tweaks doesn't make the GT86 a bad handling car. It just means the GR86 has probably got a slightly better tuned setup. So let's talk about the big elephant in the room here between the GT86 and the GR86 is the extra 30 horsepower. Okay, you're not gonna not notice that, I'll be honest, right? But does that make the 200 horsepower GT86 a slow car? Well, no, it doesn't. It's still a lot of power, 200 horsepower in a car that weighs about 1,200 kilos. I mean, even for the most experienced drivers, 200 horsepower in the wet, driving a little bit overzealous, is still the recipe for being able to park one of these up in a tree. It can happen. Now, I will freely admit that when I got the car, after doing a load of track days, I found the limit of the car. I pushed it and I extracted that whole 200 horsepower. So yeah, I went the Cosworth route, now I've got 300 horsepower. Perfect, will never regret it. But I wouldn't say that the base car is a slow car by any means. If you cast your mind back to 2012 when this car came out, I remember all of the journalists saying how it was a future classic. And you can totally see why. I mean, it's absolutely stunning. Of course, if you're on the market for a brand new car, then the GR86 is going to be the only option that works for you, because the GT86 has been off sale for a few years now. But if it's not essential that you have to buy brand new, if you're open to buying on the used car market, then I'd argue the case the GT86 is clearly better value for money. So yeah, maybe the GR86 has got a more modern interior compared to the GT86, but I'd argue that on the used market there's a good supply of very premium spec GT86s, and the interiors on those probably nicer than the GR86. So yeah, the new car has more horsepower than the old car, stock for stock, nobody's disputing that. If you're going to take it on track days though, or have a look at the actual lap times, the gap between the two is not all that significant. End of the day, when you add extra horsepower and you get a penalty of weight, that's going to reduce the effects that extra horsepower has got. So if you think you're going to go to a track day and see all the GR86 owners destroying the GT86 owners, it's not going to happen. So yeah, the new car has suspension and chassis improvements over the old car. However, the old car is lighter and it has the better steering. So financially speaking, either car should be a good investment and it should hold its value really, really well. Most important thing, low mileage, full clean history, decent spec, and well looked after. You can't go wrong. But what if 200 horsepower simply isn't enough for you? What if the 230 horsepower of the GR86 is the minimum that you're willing to accept? Well, you're probably still better off buying a GT86, to be honest, because you can buy one and you can tune it up like I've done. Or you can buy one that's already been modified. There's plenty of really good modified examples out there on the used car market. Either way, what you're going to end up with is a car that eclipses the horsepower and the performance of the GR86, and you're going to have a lot of extra cash left in your back pocket. But in the game of buying an 86, there are no losers. Doesn't matter whether you buy a GT86, GR86, top spec, low spec, an auto, a manual, an NA, supercharged, a turbo, they're all going to be fantastic. You can take them all on track day and you can have an absolute blast. You can still daily drive them. They're going to be really economical and really reliable. So there's no lose in this game. But I hope this helped you consider maybe the older car, because there are a lot more around. They are better value for money, and the GR86, as lovely as it is, they're all the same car. So thanks for watching and see you next time. Bye for now.